Good morning, Illini. Welcome back to Healthy Illini Podcast. I am your host, Matt Schrock, and it's the end of the semester. Every year, every semester, it feels like, how did we get here? But we're here already. And we've talked recently about some finals prep, about, studying, keeping yourself healthy on campus. But today, we're actually going to take a little bit of a different aspect, and we're going to talk about what happens when you leave campus. So I've got some guests here to talk with us, and I'm excited to start the conversation. Today, I'm joined by three students we have here at UIUC. They have been gracious enough to come and talk to me about this, but I want to introduce them real quick. First up, we have Emma Hahn. She is a sophomore here at UIUC with a major in actuarial science. Emma, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
And also joined by Hayden Fisher. She's a junior, and she's getting her bachelor's in clinical psychology with a minor in public health. Hayden, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And rounding out our three, we have Caitlin Niesman. She's a junior also, and she is majoring in teaching of Spanish with math bilingual ESL endorsements. Caitlin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we were actually talking off air before this about the end of the semester, and it's a major moment, always. Doesn't matter if it's spring semester, summer, fall, whatever. End of semester is a huge event, really, because you have the rush of finals, the crazy preparation, the culmination of months of work and effort that have gone through the semester, and then just like that, it's over. And you can breathe, and you get to take a break. And we talk about that break. Oh, are you looking forward to break? It's so great to have a break. But sometimes that break isn't easy. It's not that cut and dried sometimes when you talk about a break at the end of a semester, especially between semesters. And so that's something I want to talk about today because it can be difficult for a lot of students. And I really wanted to ask you about some things that you've learned in your own journeys, in your own experiences that have helped you get the most out of that time, especially between fall and spring semester, because that's where we're at right now. That's really an important time. And so let's start off with talking about just kind of defining a little bit why winter break can be harder than someone might expect it to be. So from your own experiences, you've all had semesters before. What are some things you've learned that during that fall to winter break that can cause stress as you're transitioning out of the semester you just finished?
Yeah, so me personally, I really love my independence on campus. I love I'm in my own apartment. I make my own food. I do what I want kind of when I want it. And so going back home with parents is very difficult. And I don't think that we really think about that super often. It's like, oh yeah, we get to go home and see our family. But then there's also we get to go home and be with our family for a month. And it's very different. So being able to establish that boundary and kind of take time for yourself and establish some sort of independence at home, even if it's just a little bit, has really, really helped me because that is a really difficult thing that I found.
Going off of that, boundaries, balance, two big words. Balancing that is very hard for me, especially. So knowing when is family time and when I can go get coffee with my friends, or when I'm working and when I'm just sitting and doing nothing at home is super important too.
Yeah, I feel like for me, in addition to family, just in general, there's so many people on this campus and I have friends here and it's all great, but it's very stimulating. And then to kind of come home and be in the quiet and it's just me and my family and my house. I feel like it's a nice change, but I feel like it's a big adjustment because you're kind of getting used to, there's people outside my door. I live in an apartment with hundreds of people and now I'm back at home and the comfort of my home, but it also is just, I don't know, to me it's a big adjustment when it's kind of a lot of people and going to just me and my family.
That can be a huge part of it is during the semester, it really doesn't matter what your major is or what you're involved in. It's a go atmosphere. You have things constantly going, deadlines, social events, just trying to take care of all that. And you go from that full speed, that ramps up during finals even, in the studying and the activities. And then all of a sudden it just takes a complete turn. And you really don't, you look at it and go, you may or may not have anything scheduled. You're just kind of there, which is not a bad thing, but it can be tough on that. Is there an element of the environment change? Because you go from, like you said, Hayden, you go from your own space, your own independence, to a place that is familiar but not really the same anymore. Is that something that's difficult to transition to?
Yeah, I feel like every time I go home, which isn't super often, something's different. My mom, we got a new coffee pot that I didn't see until Thanksgiving break. I was like, oh, not bad, just different. And I think that it can be really challenging to go home to something that I lived in the house at home for so many years and now just minor things change and it's oh, I wasn't a part of that. And that kind of sucks and that's kind of hard. And it's not a huge deal, but it's oh, okay, everything's changing, especially you're on a college campus where things are changing constantly and you're used to home being a constant, and having just even the little things is like, damn, like, or dang, or whatever, like that sucks.
And from a parent side, because I as I've said on a few episodes, I have a freshman in college now. That home hasn't changed for me. It is different than my daughter's not there anymore, but the environment hasn't really changed. So now the idea of when she comes home, it's kind of like, oh, she's going to slide right back in. It's going to be the same as it was. It's not. You know, you have to be, as a parent, I have to be aware of that. But it's the same thing for students who are coming home, that you're stepping into something that's familiar, but in a slightly different dynamic, because you're no longer the same person. They're really no longer the same people. So you have to find that new that new position. One more thing that can cause stress, I'm curious of your thoughts on, is it hard to go from that daily routine where you have a familiarity of what everything's going to happen to a completely different daily routine? Is that something that is refreshing? Or in your experience, was it something that kind of brought you a little bit of stress and anxiety because it just felt weird?
I think it's very half and half for me. I'm very much a person that has to plan everything out and has a schedule all day, every day. I know exact times, where I'm going, who I'm with. So to show up back home where it's like you don't have anything planned, which is great because you finally get a break, which is the whole reason why you're there. But then all of a sudden you have all this time. And then for me, because I'm such a busy bee, when I have all this time, I'm like, I should be doing something. Like, I should be filling this time because I'm wasting this time. But it's not wasting time if you're not doing anything. Like, maybe you needed that to not do anything. And that was something really important that was crucial for me to learn over all my breaks. Was knowing that it's okay to just sit there and stare at the wall for a little bit. Like, you can do that. It's okay.
That brings me to the next part that I actually want to ask is we've identified a few of the stressors, so which is great. But more importantly, how do you deal with the stressors? That's really what I want to get to, your experience, what works for you. And we can start with that. Let's start with the change of schedule and the slowdown. Caitlin, you talked about it, that it's okay to slow down. Is that something that Emma, Hayden, that you guys have experienced too? And how did you navigate, and what tips do you have on how to make the most of that time and not feel that tension because things have changed?
Yeah, I think that it's very easy to kind of like be harsh on yourself because when I first come home, I'm usually so tired that I sleep all the time for like that first week, and I feel like it's easy to go, I'm not being productive. I'm not doing work like I do every day at school. So it's easy to be like, oh, like, and I'm not productive. That's not like a good thing. But I think that rest and like recharging is equally as important as like being productive. Like, so I think that taking the steps to like kind of recharge and like recenter your focus, so that then when you do want to be productive, like after you rested, you can give it your all. So
yeah, and going off of that, I know, I mean, maybe this is universal, maybe it's not, but my mom is very like, it's 11 a.m., why are you still in bed? Like, you need to get up. Like, Caitlin's nodding at me right now, like, what are you doing? But yeah, it's okay. Like, you need to rest. Like Emma was saying, like, it's so important for yourself, and it's so different. Like, right now I'm like, go. Like, I think I slept like 3 hours last night, and it's just constant. And then going home, it's like, just setting the boundary, like I had said earlier, and just saying, I need to rest. Like, I need to take care of myself. And then along with that, like, making yourself go out, even if it's just like you drive the car to get gas or something, like just taking some time for yourself, but also like doing something independent and still being able to be with your family and be at home. But again, the boundary and the balance of like, when can I be by myself? When can I be with my family is super important.
So how do you, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, all three of you. So, you talked about, Hayden, you said your mom's like, well, it's 11 a.m., why are you not up? Which I totally get. But as you go home, you're back in a different set of rules, a different set of expectations. You may even go home to a home where your room is no longer your room. It may have been turned into a meeting room or an office or an exercise room. We've all heard the stories. So how do you navigate that? How do you approach it to still be respectful of the authority you're under when you're in that house, but also identify that I'm a little bit more independent than I was. I'm not that same person. How do you approach that conversation?
There's a very stereotypical answer of like open communication, and everyone's like, come on now, open communication. But I'm thankful enough to have a really strong relationship with my mom. I grew up in a single parent household, so our bond is not quite like anybody else's. So I'm able to just be like, hey, tonight I want to go out at 8 p.m. to the coffee shop with my friend, and I'm not going to be back until 9 p.m. I know you're going to be sleeping already, but I can come back at 9 p.m. and it's okay. And so just being upfront about it with your parents of, this is what I want to do, but tomorrow I'll make sure that I'm up before 11 to go out with my little brother. Or I'll make a balance of, if I get to do this, I'll do this for you type thing, but not do it in a rude way. You know, like you can still tell your parents like, hey, I'm growing up and I know you're growing up too. And I know it's hard for you to see me like this, that I'm a changed person. But making it very direct to them in a way that's still very respectful.
I feel like another thing too is kind of clarifying, because for example, usually I'm home alone like during the day because my parents work, and then when they come home then I'm like with them. But then usually like by the time it's like, so I'm usually with them from like, I don't know, 5 to 9 p.m. But then it's kind of, once it's like 9 or 10 and we're all getting tired, it's kind of like, I kind of just like to go upstairs in my room and just be on my phone or like decompress before I go to sleep. But I think like making it kind of known that like it's not personal when I want to go off on my own, or like not necessarily isolate, but just simply enjoy like my own personal space, and to like kind of like communicate that it's not like a personal thing, like, oh, I dislike being around you, but more like I'm still used to in college not necessarily having to justify, you know, when I just supposedly disappear in my room and relax. So I think making it known that it's not a personal thing when I want to just go to my room or have some alone time, but it's just out of a place of like, it's almost something I'm used to in college. So still kind of being able to do the stuff I do at college like at home, but still like making it known that it's not personal.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I did was saying, instead of, hey, is it okay if I do this? I said, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And just the minor change in wording, valuing their opinion, but also establishing that like I'm making my own choice. I'm asserting some sort of independence and autonomy from this, but also making them feel like they have a say in kind of what's happening. And I'm very fortunate. My family goes to bed at like 8 p.m. So, and they're like, at 7:30, they're like, yep, we're gonna like clock in soon. I'm gonna say, okay, well, I'm going to go to this person's house, or like, I might have this person over. Is that okay? Like, we'll be sure to be quiet. So that's really helpful for me personally. But again, just that language differentiation is super, super helpful for me.
And that kind of leads into the next question I wanted to ask you all. Is so you set your boundaries, you set your expectations, you kind of figured out that new routine with family or even friends. But you're on break. It's the break between the semesters, and one of the purposes of break is to relax and refresh. So what are the things that you like to do? What are the things that you've learned that are really important for you? It may be, I need time to read. I need time to go out with friends. I need time to just veg out on my phone. Whatever it may be. What are the things that you've learned in your own experience? This may be very individualistic, but what are the things you've learned in your experience that during break you're like, I have to make sure I make time for this?
I'm a big fan of crocheting, and unfortunately during the semester I've brought all my yarn with me and I have yet to even touch it because I'm so busy. So I think kind of being able to go home and do something that I enjoy that I'm not able to do during the semester is like very rewarding, or to be like, oh, I was really busy, but now I can finally have some time for myself. It's like nice to do that.
Yeah, I like to paint. Can't say I'm very good at it, but I really enjoy it. So when I go home over Thanksgiving break, I bought like $50 worth of paint stuff and just paint it for hours and hours, and just making sure I have that creative outlet. Because I feel like here on campus, obviously it's very academic. I'm doing academic things all day long. And so going home and just establishing that as like, this is my designated creative space if I want it to be. So making sure I fit that in, catching up with high school friends if we're in town, and then designating time to be like, I'm going to my room for 3 hours and I'm going to watch TikTok, or I'm binging a new show. This is my time. Please don't bother me, kind of a thing. And just letting myself not be productive. I know Caitlin said that was super difficult, and it is. But being like, I deserve this. I worked really hard for all these months and all these weeks. I did all the things. Now it's time for me to not do anything.
Yeah, going off of that, I always block time to watch Hallmark movies with my mom. That's a big Christmas thing, and we have a lot of family traditions. I sing at a couple churches back home, so I always make sure that I'm around to do that. And then I actually go to work. So that's a not very relaxing answer, it sounds, but my job is like my second family. I'm so close with all of them. So when I go to work, I worked over Thanksgiving break actually too, because going back, I only had to focus on one thing, where here I'm focused on so many different things. I'm balancing everything, where I just have to go be a waitress and I have to focus on, okay, what's the soup for today? And that's the only thing I have to worry about. And then I get to catch up with all the employees that are there and then all the regular customers. So that's always something that I personally enjoy doing because I'm relaxed when I'm at work, which is kind of insane to say, but it's one of those environments that it's just like, I don't have to stress about anything.
I think it's interesting that you talked about work and then you almost apologized for it, because it is, I mean, it's not, I don't want to say it's not uncommon, but it's not always the most common answer. But I have three very different answers here on what you like to do. And you shouldn't have to apologize for it, because it's your experience. It's understanding who you are. That's a lot of what Healthy Illini is about, is finding your journey. And some people are very outgoing and very extroverted. Some are very introverted, and both are fine. And so I'm kind of like with you, Caitlin. I feel most comfortable in groups, in activity. And so sitting still is not easy for me. And there's moments where I need it, but I enjoy being part of groups. And so, you saying work, that you've learned that's what works for you. It may not work for anybody else, but it works for you. The same with crocheting. It's what works for you. My daughter crochets, so I got to I understand that. And she's the same way. She took all her stuff to college. She hasn't used it early at all. But when she comes home, that's what she wants to do. And that's okay. And that's the path that you take. And so that's really part of what I wanted to highlight in this episode is that you are on your own journey, and you have to find the things that work for you. It may not work for anybody else, and that's okay. And things that work for somebody else may not work for you, and that's also okay. So I really appreciate that. I want to transition to one more aspect of the break, because we will run out of time. But we could talk on this for hours, but I do want to transition to the last thing, which is the break is between semesters of academic work. And while it's everybody talks about the idea of going home and you're resting, you're relaxing, that's all wonderful too. There is an element of, you just came out of a very intense 3 months of doing work, doing studies, gaining knowledge. You have a quick break, and then you jump back into another intense 3 months of knowledge, of education, of academics, things like that. So how do you go home and, I don't want to say completely let go, but basically let go of the semester you just had, whether you were pleased or displeased in how it went? How do you kind of detox from that or decompress from that, and at the same time prepare yourself for the next semester and not have any of that anxiety carry over? I don't know if the question's making sense completely, but you're all nodding at me, so I think so. So what are things that you do to close that one chapter, prepare for the next semester?
So as you said, it's between the break. So I see my break as a sandwich. So the beginning piece of bread, or like the beginning of my break, is finishing up finals. So the 8th through the 15th. I fortunately don't have to be on campus for that. So I can go home early. So I don't have any in-person exams. So I'm still treating that time as being in the headspace of like, okay, I need to make sure everything's turned in, double check all those Canvas pages to make sure nothing is going to be late, and take that time to wrap up the semester. And then actually over New Year's break, or like the 31st and the 1st, we have a whole family get together, and they always grill you, and you have the interrogation, like, how'd the semester go? What'd you do? What are you involved in on campus? And they want to know everything about you. That's my reflection period of like, this is what I did, and this is what I enjoyed, and this is what I really struggled with. And then after I see all my family, I'm pretty much out of that headspace, and then I don't clock back into school headspace until the Friday or Saturday before. And I make sure I come back to campus on that Sunday, so I have all day Sunday to feel grounded back in my apartment. I know where everything's at. Do I have food in my apartment? Because most of the time I don't. And I made my planner. Sometimes I'll do that at home, or I'll look at my mom's calendar, because I try to go to my brother's events. So I make sure that I have all of their stuff. And then, so those 2 to 3 days before is when I try to clock back into the headspace of like, here, do I have all my classes? Am I ready? Do I feel prepared? I'm never really prepared, but am I close enough to what I need to be? And then that middle part is when I'm working, visiting with my friends, doing fun things, getting our Christmas tree, all the little things that make you a little happy.
Yeah, I feel like my timeline is like sort of similar, because I think that usually when I return home around like December 15th, I feel like just those last days of December, those last 2 weeks is mainly kind of filled with a lot of distractions, like the holidays and all of that. And I also like to just kind of use those 2 weeks to relax and just enjoy my time at home. And then usually right after New Year's, January, I think, oh, it's like a new year. It's kind of time to regroup. It's actually an interesting perspective because I'm someone where I cannot really do work in my living space very well. Like, I just get really distracted. I think it's because I see it as a place of comfort, but that easily leads me to kind of just feel lazy or not want to do something. So then I try to usually drive to like the library or like a coffee shop, and then like maybe like start preparing for the semester if I can. I have a lot of math classes, so usually those concepts I can look up online and watch a few videos, and that usually makes me feel better going into the next semester, knowing that I at least did a little preparation or felt like I did something to kind of give me an edge when classes do start up.
Yeah, it is really hard for me. I ruminate on all the things that happened in the semester, good, bad, like, oh, I miss when my friends and I did this, or like, oh, I did really poorly on this assignment, like I get really down on myself. But coming from the psychology perspective, acknowledging that and that is hard, and that like this semester was a lot and you did a lot, and acknowledging like, yeah, that was hard, taking a little bit of time, not excessively, but a little bit of time to be like, I didn't like that, but I really liked this, and blah, blah, blah. And then working with yourself to acknowledge it and let it go. And that's hard. And like, I even think back to like, I'm taking a class right now and a concept came up from freshman year. And I was like, I really didn't do well on the exam freshman year. And now it's coming up again. Now I'm stressed out because I don't know what to do with it. But saying, okay, that was freshman year. That was, 2 years ago. And that's okay. And going from there and just trying to let yourself be a little sad and then regroup and go from there.
I think it was in your prep work, Hayden, that you mentioned that you really highlighted that it's important to celebrate what you accomplished. Not necessarily celebrate what you did well, but just that you're at this point. You got here. You got through a semester. That's something. Getting through a semester is a big thing. It doesn't matter if it was, what your GPA was. Doesn't matter, how well or not well you did on the assignments. You got here. And that's something to acknowledge and say, you know what, I could do this, and then move forward on the next one and take the things that you learned. When you are looking back on the things that maybe I didn't do as well in this, but I learned how to do this, or I learned that this is a better way to study, or this is not a good way for me to study. I'm like you, Emma. I can't work from home. I can't do that in my own home. I get distracted. I need the separation. And that's something I've learned in my own. So that those types of lessons you can move forward with on that, and, be kind to yourself about it on some things like that. One other thing that I did want to ask you about is how do you prepare for a semester in like when you're preparing for a class? Emma, you talked about it. You kind of watch some videos, things like that, because semester breaks are a good time to look at like internships, to try and get an idea for opportunities that are coming, get a plan for those kinds of things. Do you look at it ahead of time, or you just kind of wait to get the syllabus in the class and go, or what works best for you?
I definitely am a planner, like I said before. I'm a very extroverted person, so I have to look at it, otherwise I will go insane. But I get stressed really easily when I'm at home or I'm with my best friend and we're hanging out, and I just get all the emails that says, so-and-so uploaded the syllabus. I'm like, no, I'm not ready yet. Please don't do that. So I try to look at the syllabuses one day at a time, or like one at a time. If I sit and look at all of them all at once, I see my entire next 4 months projected out. I get so overwhelmed so quick. But one thing that I found works for me in the spring semester that doesn't work in the fall, which I think is really interesting, and I think it's solely because I'm in the marginal line and it doesn't work. But in the spring, I create an Excel spreadsheet that has all of my projected assignments, exams, big projects, and it's color coded, and then I organize it so it's by date. So it's very right there in front of you exactly what you're going to have for the entire 4 months. So on one hand, it's really stressful making that, because then I am overwhelmed for 2 hours. Like, this is going to be such a terrible semester. I'm going to be so overwhelmed. But then after I do it, I always feel better about it, because I'm like, okay, everything's planned out. I know exactly when I'm going to have to do everything. And then I transfer those into my calendar. That's an actual like paper calendar. It's not like an electronic one, because I do better with paper and pencil. And then I put all my big events in my calendar with my extracurriculars so that everything's just organized. It has to be organized in a way that I can visually see everything.
Yeah, I am the same way. Every semester I take all my assignments and all my syllabus. And side note, I try not to look at them until a couple days before classes, because I'm still on my off time. Like I still need a little bit before I'm ready to jump back in. So when I finally start looking at the syllabus, it's probably a few days before classes start. Put them in an Excel sheet, color code it, sort it by date and time and when it's due. And that definitely really helps because it prevents me from looking through the syllabus every single week of the semester and trying to figure out, okay, like I have to look at this syllabus and this one and this one and this one, and then coordinate that with all my extracurriculars and my classes and everything. So just having that in the Excel sheet, and then I go on my Google Calendar, which is also color coded, and all my classes are in one color, all my RSOs are in one color, like all my social events are in one color, and having that laid out very visually, again, like Caitlin was saying, having it all just there so that I can reference it and not have to dig too hard, I found it super helpful.
I really like your dig too hard. That's one thing that I've carried with me is like, if it's right there, it's all easy, accessible, it's all in one place. You don't have to look hard to find it, and that's what's important.
Do you guys find that, like, you guys like to kind of put everything in the calendar at once, or do you spread it out over, like, a certain period of time?
I think I sit down in one sitting for most of it, but then as things come up, like, I'll go back in and add stuff. But reading syllabus is very overwhelming. And so sometimes, if a lot of my classes now are only once a week, so I won't hit the syllabus until maybe the day before. I'll look at it, but I won't do, like, my Excel spreadsheet for it until like I am in the class and I make note of the important things that the instructor says.
Yeah, I definitely do it all in one sitting because all the information's there and I feel very overwhelmed having to look at, again, like I said, all of the different syllabi. So just compressing it down and having it there. And I find when I start working on it, I'm just like, okay, I gotta keep the momentum going. I gotta get it done. Putting it all in there in one sitting and just being like, okay, now I have it all mapped out. This makes me feel so much better about my semester.
And then 3 hours later, you can go get ice cream.
Exactly.
You're like, yeah, I did it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's just almost a little reward that you do for those things. In the semester, we talked about that with finals prep in a recent episode. But yeah, the little bit of rewards always help too during that break to get you there. I really appreciate you all coming in and talking about this. We could talk forever, but we are a little bit out of time. But I just want to say thank you because there's so many good little tips and nuggets of truth and wisdom that you have brought today. So Emma, Hayden, Caitlin, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The end of the semester is always a massive event. It's a wonderful event, and it's, as we talked about, it's a time to celebrate and a time to reflect. But it's also a really important time to rest and recharge, and that's okay. We talked about a lot of tips today, but one of the biggest ones that kept coming back was just be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself as you end a semester. But if you're looking for some advice or tips or just struggling a little bit with that transition, just because the semester ends doesn't mean that your support here at UIUC has ended. Contact us here at McKinley. Contact us at Healthy Illini. We would be happy to talk with you and find resources for you for whatever you're going through, because everybody's journey is individualistic. Whatever you're dealing with, whatever you're facing. But thank you for joining us today. You're on a personal journey no matter where you are in it. You are important and you matter. Your health and wellness are important and matter, and we're here to keep you well to excel. So go have a great week, Illini. Let us know how you're doing, and we'll catch you next time on Healthy Illini.